Have you ever wondered how the ancient Egyptians prepared their dead for the afterlife? It was a rather peculiar process. They believed in life after death, and to ensure a seamless journey there, they preserved the bodies of the deceased through a process we now know as mummification. This was no simple task. First, the body's organs were meticulously removed, leaving only the heart in place. Then, the body was dried out using a naturally occurring salt called natron, which essentially turned the body into a human jerky. This dehydration process took 40 days. Next, the body was stuffed with linen or sand to retain a human shape and wrapped in strips of linen. The wrapping was done with great care, often involving priests who recited spells to ward off evil spirits. This was followed by a final coating of resin to seal in moisture. So, the first strange practice of the ancient Egyptians was the fascinating yet eerie ritual of mummification. From cats to crocodiles, the ancient Egyptians had a peculiar reverence for animals. They worshipped a diverse array of creatures, including cats, dogs, monkeys, and even crocodiles. They considered these animals as earthly representatives of their gods. Domestic animals were deemed sacred, and their deaths were mourned as one would mourn a human being. The death of a pet was a significant event, often marked with elaborate rituals. Imagine mourning the death of a pet crocodile. That was normal for the ancient Egyptians. Makeup wasn't just a vanity item in ancient Egypt, it served practical and spiritual purposes too. Both men and women adorned their faces to shield themselves from the harsh sun and to ward off potential eye infections. Moreover, makeup was seen as a way to show respect to the gods. The most popular colors? Black coal for eyeliner, green eyeshadow, and red for the lips. So, the ancient Egyptians were pioneers of the makeup industry with their black coal and green eyeshadow. Hair lice were a big problem in ancient Egypt. Their solution? Wigs. Yes, you heard right. Wigs were a practical solution to keep these pesky critters at bay, but they weren't just for practicality. Crafted from human hair, animal hair, or plant fibers, they were also a fashion statement. Your wig style could tell a lot about you. From status to occupation, each had a unique wig design. So wigs were not just a fashion statement, but a practical solution to a pesky problem. Now this one might make your stomach churn. Some ancient Egyptians ate cockroaches. Unusual as it may seem, there's evidence that this was done for medicinal purposes. It was believed that these insects had curative properties, potentially beneficial in treating a range of ailments. Whether this was an everyday practice or reserved for specific circumstances is still a subject of debate among historians. But one thing's for certain, the ancient Egyptians were far ahead of their time in many ways. If you thought eating insects was a modern trend, think again. Here's another bug-related practice. The deceased were left to be cleaned by insects. You see, as part of the mummification process, the bodies of the deceased were placed in a special chamber. This wasn't for some sort of spiritual cleansing or ritual, it was a practical step in the preservation of the body. The bodies were intentionally left for insects to feast upon. The insects would consume the soft tissues and internal organs, essentially leaving behind a natural skeletal structure. This process made the subsequent steps of mummification easier. Imagine, if you will, the buzzing of insects, the slow but methodical dismantling of what once was a living, breathing individual. This was a normal part of life and death in ancient Egypt, a testament to their unique relationship with the natural world, and a clear demonstration of their pragmatic approach to the afterlife. Certainly not a job for the squeamish. The ancient Egyptians had a deep reverence for the Nile River. This mighty river was the lifeblood of their civilization, providing essential irrigation for their crops, a means of transportation, and a crucial food source. But the river was more than a natural resource. The Egyptians personified the Nile as a goddess, a divine entity whose annual flooding brought fertility and prosperity to the land. So, the Nile was not just a river, but a divine entity. In the eyes of the ancient Egyptians, their pharaohs were more than just rulers. They were viewed as divine entities, earthly embodiments of the gods themselves. These divine monarchs were accorded unparalleled reverence. Grand temples were erected in their honor, and their tombs were intricate edifices designed to serve as eternal homes for their godly souls. The pharaohs were not mere mortals, but gods walking among men. The ancient Egyptians believed that they could talk to the dead. It's a notion that may seem bizarre to us, but to them, it was a crucial part of their spiritual life. They believed that the departed were not lost forever, but merely existed in a different realm, one that could be reached through certain means. One of these methods was through the written word, letters, painstakingly etched onto pieces of pottery or scraps of papyrus, were often left in tombs. These letters were not mere remembrances or eulogies, they were direct messages to the deceased, sometimes asking for guidance, sometimes seeking resolution for disputes left unsettled in life. Gifts were also left in tombs, offerings to appease the spirits and seek their favor. These could range from food and drink to personal items that the deceased had cherished in life. So, a letter to the dead was not an unusual sight in ancient Egypt. For entertainment, the ancient Egyptians wrestled with animals. This wasn't your average weekend hobby, but a thrilling, perilous sport. They would grapple with some of the most formidable creatures of the wild, such as lions, crocodiles, and even hippos. These wrestling matches were not only for the thrill of the challenge, but also as a display of courage and strength. So while the idea of squaring off against a massive hippo or a swift lion might seem outrageous to us, facing a lion or a hippo in a wrestling match was just another day in ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians believed that death was not the end, but a beginning. In their view, the soul met Osiris, the god of the underworld, who would weigh the deeds of the individual's life. It was a court of a divine kind, where virtues led to eternal bliss, and vices to ceaseless suffering. This belief was so deeply embedded, it influenced their daily actions and the way they treated others. So, life after death was quite a serious affair in ancient Egypt. The pyramids of Egypt are iconic structures, but do you know why they were built? These colossal monuments are more than just a symbol of ancient Egypt. They were built as grand tombs for the pharaohs, the revered leaders who were seen as gods on earth. The belief was that the pharaohs would continue their existence in the afterlife, and thus they needed a fitting abode. Building these pyramids was no small feat. It required incredible engineering skills and a massive labor force. Imagine, without any modern machinery, these workers cut, transported, and arranged massive stone blocks, some weighing as much as 2.5 elephants. The precision of the construction is equally astounding, with some pyramids aligning perfectly with celestial bodies. The magnificent pyramids are indeed a testament to the ancient Egyptians' strange but awe-inspiring practices. Their legacy remains etched in stone, reminding us of a civilization that once was. We've journeyed through the strange lifestyle practices of the ancient Egyptians, from mummification to pyramid building. We learned about their intricate mummification process, aimed at preserving bodies for the afterlife, and their reverence for domestic animals, believed to be earthly representatives of the gods. We explored their use of makeup, not just for aesthetics, but for sun protection, infection prevention, and religious respect. We saw how they donned wigs to shield their hair from pests and even consumed cockroaches for medicinal purposes. We discovered their practice of cleaning the dead with bugs to aid mummification, their worship of the Nile River, and their view of pharaohs as gods. We delved into their belief in communicating with the dead and wrestling with animals for sport. We also examined their faith in judgment after death and their remarkable pyramid construction skills. Though strange to us, these practices were a part of the unique and fascinating culture of ancient Egypt.